What are you doing? Running laps? Should we let people just like do like a greeting? Like, I'm just gonna say, never mind. I won't do it. I won't do it. Yeah. There's plenty of seats at the front. Barbara doesn't bite often. I've never been. Okay, we are going to get started. There are plenty, well, there's not plenty, but there are seats down front. Here we go. Okay, welcome everybody to the 2023 UNC Water and Health Conference. You are very warmly welcome. So I'm Kata Lang. I am the Director of Programs and Projects at the Water Institute and the Director of the Water and Health Conference. And I wanted to extend my warmest welcome to each and every one of you joining from around the world. So I wanted to let you all know that we are live streamed currently. And so if you all would take a look at the camera right here and give a wave to all of our online participants from around the world. Oh, well, this slide is to tell you that it's Monday all day. And so we hope that you stay with us for the duration of the program. It's for those of you who have a little jet lag, it is Monday. I told you that we're joined by over 1,500 virtual participants. So that's fantastic. We are breaking records this year in that we have over 750 on-site registrants. And that's a first for us. And we have over 1,500 joining us online. And so that's really exciting. We're also offering translation virtually for French and Spanish. And we want you to tune in daily to the virtual program that's hosted by Jan Willem Rosenboom. If you want to stand up and give a wave, Jan Willem. Yeah. Every morning for the virtual participants, we will start a program at 7:45 Eastern time, and it will go for a half an hour. And Jan Willem and a guest will go through the run of show for the day and give you an overview of all the day's events. And so you'll want to tune in for that. And we also have a virtual networking session online from 12:30 to 1. And today it will be hosted by Aaron Salzberg and Barbara Evans. So make sure that you join in for that networking session. Now, for all of you who are here on site, can you pull your hard copy program and wave it in the air? And then turn it around and look at the back where it says, "This program belongs to." Would you please write your name on your program? Thank you. Thank you. And if you lose your program, please go ask for it at the desk if somebody turns it in. And hopefully somebody will turn it in because we only have one hard copy program for each of you. Otherwise, you'll need to go online and download it from the website. Also, if you have this, your name tag, would you please wear it while you are on site for multiple reasons, but we do want to keep track of you, but also for safety and security reasons, we've checked everybody in. And so you are now logged in with the Friday Center, and we will keep track of you and make sure that you are safe and secure during your visit on site with us. I also wanted to let you know that the Water Institute table is at the front entrance. And so if you do have questions or if you lose anything, feel free to stop by the Water Institute table or the Friday Center help desk and ask for help or ask for directions. And we'd be pleased to show you where to go. And then there is a field trip that's being offered at the end of the week to OWASA, the Orange Water and Sewerage Authority. And so that will take place on Friday. So if you're still here with us on Friday, please sign up. It's first come, first served, and there's only 32 seats on the bus. And so if you're here on Friday afternoon, please sign up for that if you're interested in going to OWASA. Here is a map of the Friday Center, and you will also find that map in the front cover of your hard copy program right here. So if you need to find your way around, please refer to your program. It's got all the information as to how to log on to the Wi-Fi. It's got all the transportation information, hotel contact information, and of course, it's got the entire program for the week. So refer to that if you will. And we also want to let everybody know that there are masks available to wear at your convenience and at your choosing from the Water Institute table. Hand sanitizer stations are located all the way throughout the facility. So does it need to be said at a WASH conference? Yeah, okay, yeah. Please wash your hands. We will also have overflow seating for the plenary sessions in the Dogwood room because Monday it is full, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we expect to be even more full. And so if you're not here when we start, then please use the overflow room in Dogwood. And we would, of course, love for you to join us on Twitter, on social media. And so please connect with us there. And now I would really like to introduce, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dean Messonnier. She is the Dean of the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, the #1 public school of public health in the United States. She has more than 25 years of experience as a public health leader, including as director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention from 2014 to 2021. We were fortunate to bring her to Gillings in 2022 and to have her part of the water and sanitation family now. So Dean Messonnier, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I told them I would be more happy if I didn't have to look at my own face when I was giving these remarks. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chapel Hill. Welcome to North Carolina. Welcome to the 2023 Water and Health Conference. We're incredibly proud of the UNC Water Institute, established in 2010. The Water Institute has its home in the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, where we have a long history of commitment to WASH. And we're proud to continue that commitment through this conference and the Water Institute. Please join me in thanking Kata and Aaron Salzberg and the other members and leaders of the Water Institute from the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering for putting together this conference and bringing us all together. It is inspiring to see the most creative, committed problem solvers working in this area, in this same space, together in real life, and also those who are here virtually. And it's impressive, not just in the sheer numbers, but also we have representatives of over 3/4 of the world's countries at this conference, people from 65 different countries on site, and from 150 countries overall. Clean water is life. Access to safe, affordable, and sustainable drinking water must be one of the most foundational priorities of public health. And we need the kind of approaches that you will explore here today to get the solutions out there and up to scale. Please use this phenomenal opportunity to connect and reconnect with each other across institutions and countries to the fullest extent. You bring the science, experience, perspective, and resources from all parts of the world, from hyperlocal to global, and we need all of you. Finally, as I am sure you all know, in March 2023, the UN hosted its first ever high-level meeting on water in almost 50 years. I'm proud to say that the impact of and the clear need filled by this Water and Health Conference was a key driver for convening that UN event. We're excited to be able to help in driving the UN action items for water forward through this conference. Thank you. And I think Erin's up next.
Good morning. Sorry for taking all of you out of the meeting because we had already begun. There's great excitement out in the hallways. Thank you. It's great to see. Sorry, is that my fault? No. Okay. Sorry. Great to see so many familiar friends and colleagues. I used to use the word old, but I don't do that. Long-standing friends and colleagues, and so many new faces, as you've already heard today. This is the largest Water and Health Conference that we've ever hosted. And we owe that all to you. It really is. We know it isn't easy for you to take time out of your schedules to come visit us and be part of the conference in person. It makes a huge difference. And having you all here really makes this the kind of conference that we want it to be. And we are also, and I think all your presence has made this happen, the UNC Water and Health Conference is the world's largest international conference dedicated exclusively to water and health. And again, we owe all that to all of you. Sorry, I'm going to move this keyboard so I'm not messing all the slides up as we go along. Okay, so for those of you who are new to water and health, our goal really is to create a safe space where we can collectively interrogate the latest science and evidence to inform policy and practice around drinking water sanitation and hygiene issues. And I think this is especially important today when we live in this world where mis and disinformation often dominate the public discourse. It's really our collective job to remind people that science and evidence matter, and not just from laboratories and from academia, but from the field. Indigenous knowledge, the expertise of workers, and the lived experience of those without access to wash, these are all part of our understanding the behaviors, the prejudices, the systemic inequalities that impede equality of access. And these are the backbone of the work that we're trying to do here. And so creating an environment where we can all sit together as scientists, as policymakers and practitioners and share these learnings and experiences across the divides of race, culture, history, wealth, meritocracy, opportunity. I think it was David who told me this yesterday. David Gute reminded me yesterday, this is what makes our meeting unique. And again, it's all due to all of you. So thank you. We also could not do this without some of our sponsors. I think many of you know this. We don't make money off this conference. This is a labor of love for many of us. And what we are very grateful to the support for some of our key sponsors. So I do want to call out the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, Osprey Foundation, and World Vision, whose contributions have really enabled us to bring a lot of our international colleagues to this meeting and to support the online conference that we've got as well. So thank you very much for your guys' contributions. I also want to thank PLOS Water and the Journal of Water and Sanitation and Hygiene and Development. Both of them have committed to providing space to take some of the best outcomes from this conference and to put it into the journals. This is all part of our effort to make this conference more accessible to a broader audience across the world and to support researchers across the globe in their publishing efforts. And so I think there was a training, I'm looking at Kata, we had a training this morning, right, on a writing skills shop. We're really doing our best to also not just encourage all of you, but all of our partners from across the world and give them opportunities to publish their science and their experiences. And so this is something that we're all working for. This is a difficult part for me. I think for those of you who've been with us for the past few years, you know that I struggle with land acknowledgement statements. And I'm actually pretty public about those struggles because I'm still not sure I'm going to do this right. And so I'm pretty open about the challenges I have in trying to share this journey and how we come to terms with who we are, how we got here, and how we might address some of these inequalities of the past and present. Each year, I actually do a lot of homework. I do my own research to learn more both about myself, but about these kinds of statements and how this kind of works. And it's a troubling past, right? It's a past of murder, racism, the erasure of Indigenous people. And so I've learned a lot this past year that finds its way into these statements. And so hopefully you'll bear with me. But I've also learned from some of the indigenous communities this past year that a lot of these statements may be more about appeasing our own guilt rather than really encouraging and committing ourselves to the actions that we can do to restore dignity, land, and opportunities to those that we've displaced or oppressed. With this in mind, we want to acknowledge that North Carolina is home to the Occaneechi, Lumbee, Coharie, Hallowasapani, Eastern Band of the Cherokee, the Meherrin, which, by the way, the Meherrin, they're an Iroquois tribe whose name actually means the people of water, something we're all aspiring to be, I think. The Tuscarora, Supani, Wiccama Siouan nations, along with the many other indigenous peoples living in both tribal and homeland and urban settings. In fact, many people might not know, but North Carolina is the largest indigenous population east of the Mississippi River. We acknowledge and give thanks to the first peoples of this land and their descendants. It's also important to acknowledge and honor the crucial role that enslaved people had in the early days of this campus and where we are here today. Enslaved people were sold as a sheeted property to help fund the establishment of UNC, and the labor of enslaved people built UNC Chapel Hill and undergirded its operations until emancipation. We acknowledge and give thanks to the enslaved people who built UNC and their descendants. May we build upon the memories and goodwill of all who walked and labored here before us in truth, integrity, and honor, and may we commit in our own way to serve, restore dignity, land, and opportunity to those who've been oppressed. I also want to take a quick moment to reflect on, it's always hard when we're at meetings like this, when there's so many things going on in the world today. I just want to reflect a moment on the lives lost and the devastation levied in the past few weeks in the Middle East. It's always a challenge to sit here while others struggle to survive, whether it's the Middle East or Sudan or Ukraine or many other places that we could list. Many of us have colleagues, friends, or family who've already suffered or are currently caught up in conflict. So you're all in our thoughts, and we are pleased that we could be here and hope you will all be here with us next year. We need to remember that without human security, there is no water security. It's something we all need to work for. Okay, as I mentioned, we have a great week coming up. In fact, it's already begun with side events and workshops earlier this morning. I think you all know about the side events, verbal presentations, and posters. You'll find them all, of course, in the program. I'm very happy to encourage you not to miss our plenary events as well. We did something a bit different this year and assembled an advisory board to help us develop the plenary topics that we think will both challenge and inform you. I want to thank Clarissa Brocklehurst. Do you want to give a quick wave? No, she doesn't. There you go. She quick wave. Thank you. And the entire advisory board. Clarissa Brocklehurst was chairing the advisory board, but all the members, thank you very much. We all owe you a great debt of gratitude. In about 5 minutes, I'll turn the podium over to David Gute and Barbara Evans, who will lead us on a journey into the future of WASH, 2050 to be exact. And I guess we'll start exploring the questions of, will we have universal access? What will the future look like for all of us? And so stay here to find out. Tomorrow, we're going to focus on the WASH and fragile environments, and we'll be discussing approaches to bridging the gap across the humanitarian development and security nexus. On Wednesday, we're going to go revisit the UN 2023 Water Conference. We talked a lot about that last year, and the Dean mentioned it earlier this morning, but there were a lot of commitments made. And there's some real questions as to whether those commitments were based on sound science and evidence, and if they were actually all lived up to, would we actually make a difference in WASH coverage? And so we're going to revisit that on Wednesday. On Thursday, we'll be getting back to our own commitment to addressing inequalities, and we'll be exploring the power dynamics around WASH and the steps that we can take to ensure our programming reflects shared responsibilities and accountability between actors. And on Friday, and I hope many of you will stick around on Friday, we'll be joined by Sarosh Jha. He's the director of the World Bank's Global Water Practice. For those of you who don't know, but I suspect everyone in this room does, the World Bank is the world's largest international investor in water. And this is our chance to better learn what keeps Sarosh up at night as the World Bank tries to tackle some of these major challenges across the globe. I also want to call out, I think Kata mentioned the lunchtime series. I think we have a lunchtime series that I think will have a special appeal to the younger professionals and those of us who are trying to keep up with them. But we'll be discussing everything from making the most of your academic experience to the role of artificial intelligence, how to build communication skills. So I think we've got a lot for young professionals as well. And this is in addition, of course, to the technical sessions, side events, and everything else going on. For those online, again, we have these special discussions. Kata mentioned those, so we're excited about that. Finally, I want to highlight something a little bit different. This week is also International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week, which makes this a special time for all of us here to focus on the challenges of lead in drinking water. And I think many of you know this, lead is an extremely potent neurotoxin. There is no established safe level of lead. And it has profound and irreversible impacts on the cognitive development of children. It's also ubiquitous in many of our water supplies across the world. Recognizing the importance of this challenge, at the 2023 UN Water Conference, a number of governments and partners pledged to stop the use of lead leaching pipes and parts in the construction of new water supply systems by 2030, a major step to eradicating lead in drinking water globally. There are several events going on this week related to lead in drinking water. I hope you'll join them. There's also a new major initiative that's been launched. You'll see flyers and leaflets laying around about this global leadfreewater.org. Consider joining us and looking at the actions that your own organization can undertake to make our water lead free. So tons going on. I think you've heard enough from me. Before I turn it over, I just want to give a quick shout out to Kata Liang. As it was already mentioned, she is the heart and soul of the conference. Just thank you for everything you've done to make this conference so great. And to our student volunteers, and you'll see them running around all over the place. They're taking time away from their classes to kind of be here and to help support you. But they're also here because you guys are their mentors and role models. They want to meet you. And so if they come up and ask you a question or something, go ahead and it'll make their day. So we appreciate that. Thank you again for supporting Water and Health and making this meeting what it is. And David, it's all yours.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, water and health enthusiasts. Are we ready to start meeting people that you didn't know before you came in? Are you ready to find yourself in a hallway conversation that leads to unexpected collaboration? If so, you are in the correct place, and we are about to begin that work. We are here in the first plenary. Aaron did a wonderful job in describing how this plenary picks up themes and extends them further through the additional plenaries of this week. We are here for WASH in 2050. What does the future hold? One of the things that we have asked our excellent set of panelists to consider is how to be constructively provocative in their thoughts today. We would like there to be some amicable tension raised in the topics and themes that are explored. To the extent that we accomplish that, that becomes a success. Your participation in that success is extremely important. You will be able to extend some of the conversations that begin today and into the luncheon arrangements that have already been described, as well as to see these themes reemerge in plenaries 2, 3, and 4, and perhaps in the 5 as well. One of the areas that we have thought hard about is how can we, in our plenary today, give rise to meaningful discussion that is based in an aspect of content that we felt needed to be supported by experts beyond the panel, and in fact, not even attending this meeting. So we have asked for 3 videos to be displayed. that essentially will carry forward information on topics that will be important to set the tone of the discussions in the panels. And with that, the videos have been edited to essentially capture highlights of what is being said by each of the three thought leaders. The full videos will be displayed on the website of the conference. And I, as a professor, have two professorial duties to do. I am assigning you the goal is for you to watch the full videos on the website. So that's your homework. And also I have to give a shout out to my class back in Medford, Massachusetts, CE 57, who I'm sure are all virtually attending this meeting right now. And with that, I am going to hopefully start the videos. Here are our three content leaders.
And I can't think of a more important topic for research today. WHO has already said that climate change is the biggest threat that faces human health. Between 2030 and 2050, it's expected that climate change is going to result in an additional 250,000 deaths, and that these will be due to malaria, malnutrition, diarrheal diseases, and multiple other causes. It's really not surprising that an increase in infectious diseases is going to result in significant economic burden. It's anticipated that this will be somewhere between $2 and $4 billion a year by 2030. But even more than that, all of these changes are going to affect areas and people that are really the most vulnerable, that already don't have access to health care and face many different kinds of challenges. So if we look at climate change, our vulnerability is going to increase because exposure pathways will change, vulnerability factors will change as well, and our health system capacities will be changing too. The amount of resilience within the system is going to be a critical determinant of how health systems can serve the populations that they are intended for. The range of climate-sensitive health risks is huge, and I'm not going to walk you through all of that. But just to say that when it comes to infectious diseases, from anthrax to Zika, we should be expecting an increase with climate change. There are many, many ways in which climate change can impact infectious diseases. But I'd just like to leave you with one specific, very recent example of what climate change is already doing to us. South Asia, the Bay of Bengal in particular, has been the home of cholera, and most of the global cholera pandemics have started from this region. But if you look at this map from ECDC, which shows cholera reported from June to August of 2023, you can see that outbreaks are much greater in sub-Saharan Africa than in the traditional home of cholera. Last year, we had incredible flooding in Pakistan with much of the country underwater, and that led to outbreaks of many enteric infections, including cholera. This is going to be more and more a feature of the world, and the people that are affected are the ones that can least afford to have these kinds of health emergencies. it is our responsibility to think about what we can do to mitigate these circumstances and think about what we can do to help people as much as possible. This comes from implementation of tools that we already have, but there is an urgent need for research as well. And I hope that all of you who are attending this meeting will choose to take this on.
We know that our well-being is intertwined with that of the animals and the environment, and we need to be able to adopt a holistic and collaborative approach to health. One of the things that I think about as we think into the future on climate change and what's happening in that space and animal health is, who is the most climate resilient? Who is the most vulnerable? And is that person also the best steward? Is that person the best person to use in this space to be able to respond to the different shocks that are happening? How do we define One Health? One Health is this collaborative effort of multiple disciplines working together locally, nationally, and globally to attain optimal health for humans, animals, plants, and the environment. We are facing complex issues, as we know. COVID-19 pandemic showed us that. We have climate change happening, we have antimicrobial resistance, we have habitat fragmentation, pollution. All these issues require a multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral approach. 1.7 billion people around the world depend on livestock industry for their livelihoods. In sub-Saharan Africa, where I work most of the time, an estimated 85% of livestock keepers live in extreme poverty. 2/3 of these livestock owners are women. These are the most vulnerable to immediate and long-term impacts of climate change. And yet, they're the least climate resilient population with high vulnerability to climate change and a low readiness for its impacts. In this conversation on tackling climate change and building resilience from the animal health sector, they are mostly forgotten. We need to figure out a way to bring them into the conversation if we want to achieve anything in this. Thank you.
Imagine a donut with a hole in the middle, and imagine humanity's use of resources radiating out. So the hole in the middle is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life without the food, water, healthcare, education, housing that every person needs. We want to get everybody out of that hole, but we simultaneously can't overshoot the outer ring where we put so much pressure on this extraordinary living planet. We begin to kick it out of balance. We cause climate breakdown. We acidify the oceans, create a hole in the ozone layer. We push ourselves beyond the capacity of our planet. So in essence, the aim of the donut is to meet the needs of all people within the means of the planet. And I see this as humanity's 21st century challenge. It is the direction of progress that we need to make this century. The challenge is not easy to look at, because millions and billions of people are falling short on the essentials of life. And yet we're already overshooting at least 4 of these planetary boundaries on climate change, on biodiversity loss, land conversion, and excessive fertilizer use. So we need to take an unprecedented journey to meet the needs of all people while, having never done this before, coming back within the means of the planet. And that's why we need to transform industry and the finance that invests in it to make that possible. Is the sweet spot is in the top left-hand corner. We want to meet the needs of all people, but do so within the means of the planet. And there are no countries anywhere nearby. We are all developing countries now. No country can say that it is developed because high-income countries are massively overshooting their pressure on climate, carbon emissions, on water use, land use, fertilizer use. This is a phenomenal journey of all countries of 21st century development, and it really kicks open a new understanding of what progress means, what good industry looks like, and what kind of future we should be investing in if we're going to bring it about. I'd say near the bottom of ambition is, well, we'll do what pays now. We'll cut our carbon emissions if that cuts our costs. We'll get a green certification if that brings us niche access to markets. It's incremental steps in the right direction, but it's far too incremental. Another step up, we'll do our fair share. We'll cut our carbon emissions in step with our national ambition. We need to go further. onto science-based targets to cut emissions in line with what science tells us. And when you go there, you realize you need to actually kick up another level. We need to do mission zero, meaning we need to aim for net zero carbon emissions in our supply chains and in our manufacturing processes by 2020, 2030, 2040. At the very highest level of ambition, though, why limit yourself to saying we can be 100% less bad? Why not aim to actually be good, net positive, contributive, generative? And to me, this is where the most progressive companies aim. In fact, many of them are born into that space, born with the ambition of sequestering carbon dioxide, with the ambition of cleaning waterways, of clarifying the air, of creating health and education worldwide. That is why they're in business. And those are the kind of companies we're leading. Others are transforming and seeing how can we get from the 20th century model we've been born with, how can we transform into that new vision? And that is where we need leadership within business to make it happen.
I was remiss in my introductions to note the first video you saw was Dr. Cherry Kong, a noted enteric disease specialist working at the Gates Foundation. The second video was from Dr. Helen Amaguni, a trusted and wonderful colleague of mine at Tufts University. And Kate Raworth's contribution here is symbolized in the donut. My co-moderator, Barbara Evans, will now lead us in a bit of a discussion of unpacking the donut. Yep.
Sadly for all of you, it's not a real donut. Sorry about that, but there'll be donuts soon. Yeah, so just to sort of summarize, Cherry and Helen were kind of highlighting these enormous existential challenges within which our work now resides. The world that we work in now is not the world that I started working in 40 years ago in the wash sector. And one of the issues is that we're still in the middle of Kate's donut trying to get basic services to huge numbers of people, but also, as she says, while also trying to address this massive overshoot on the outside. Now, that little video clip that we saw was for a business meeting, but everything she said applies equally to research institutes, governments. It's really about what all of us can do to try and do our business in the water sector so that we really address the inequalities that still exist, but while also trying to address the planetary overshoots that we're at risk of. And to talk about why that means we need a whole new sector, I have an amazing panel. So I'm now going to, as if it's smoothly orchestrated, invite the panel to come up to the platform. I'm not going to introduce them one-on-one. I really hope you've seen in the printed program, their bios are there. Come on, guys, chop, chop. Honestly, you can't get the panelists these days. Great, thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't mean to boss you around. He's quite scary, actually. Grab seats, come and sit down. So we have a wonderful panel, and we really wanted to just talk a little bit about what are we to do. It's easy to become paralyzed that, you know, we're in this new world, which is very challenging, and we still haven't finished the business of the old world. But I think these people here may have some really interesting ideas. So I'm going to turn first to you, Joel. I mean, this challenge does seem very daunting. So I kind of want to ask you, what are you asking the wash sector to do? Can you give an example of how you or your organization are changing because the nature of the challenge in the wash sector has changed so much?
Okay. Sorry, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so let me answer this two different ways. The organization, I work at the World Bank. We are the largest investor in water, but we also host the largest think tank working in water and emerging markets. And more recently, there's been significant commitments to up the investments in water. Now, there are challenges with that. It goes on in the spectrum of the financial architecture around all the multilateral development banks is under discussion and changing. And I know that will be part of Aaron's interview with Saroj later in the week. But the institutions clearly are stepping up, and there's a number of different ways. We just got off a call this morning with all the multilateral development banks talking about the commitments we can make, how we can become more integrated and more collaborative. So there is a lot of discussion going on at that level. At a personal level, let me let me acknowledge everything that was said. I mean, this is difficult, okay? I don't want to underplay the challenges that are there and the work that needs to be done, and particularly the work that needs to be done. But let me also be somewhat cautiously optimistic in being provocative in terms of how I see the way forward a little bit. First of all, the fact that water is pushing its way into the climate discussions is a very positive thing. We've been trying to figure out how to get water on the agenda for a long time. There was a lot of discussion around the pandemic, the need to wash hands, and there was a thinking that we would get the investments and rise, and we didn't really achieve that. And now with climate, we see it not only in adaptation, but also mitigation. Very briefly, another positive thing I see, we're in a water and health conference, which is part of the WASH perspective, but more and more institutions are looking at water holistically, and 70 to 90% of water is used in irrigation. We have a slew of issues around water resource management, sedimentation, storage, reservoirs, dam safety. And we are starting to integrate and look at that full spectrum. And I think the answer is there. It's not being stovepiped. So that's happening. I think we've done this before. We've overcome this challenge in other sectors. And I pointed earlier today to the power sector. This is not to say everything is well in power, but it does give us examples on where to focus. Our institutions have to be technically and financially efficient. Our governance arrangements have to be clear and transparent. With that, they were able to address technology issues, innovation issues, and financing issues. And then lastly, what we really need, and what I think is ultimately going to make or break this, and it sounds like a cliche, but we need the leadership. We need people to step up and really address on these things. Not only new things, although that's important, innovation and technology, but also the basics. We know if our service providers are not efficient, they're not going to attract public money. They're not going to attract private money. So it's clear the way forward. It's just whether we have the ability and the leadership to really do that. And that's in this room. So I am cautiously optimistic.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm maybe just going to pass straight on to Edwige, because I think it's really heartening to hear the kind of new approaches that you're talking about and the optimism. But I want to turn to Edwige, who's working at the pointy end, there on the ground in Haiti, and just ask you what needs to change politically. I mean, the WASH sector in Haiti is very severely under-resourced. It's not necessarily rising to this challenge. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit of your experience of how this feels at the coalface, if you like.
Thank you. I speak French and Creole, so I'm going to try to read English for you. And I will read my notes.
Yeah.
In Haiti, the potable water sector is associated with sanitation. And naturally, drinking water tends to overshadow sanitation, fortunately. For potable water, in Haiti, the big issue is that infrastructure takes precedence over services, and interventions are targeted at the poorest area, which makes financial sustainability impossible. But as the head of sanitation in Haiti, today I'm going to focus more in sanitation, and rapidly I'm going to explain the situation and then I will answer the question. Haiti is unique in that all sanitation is non-collective, so the sewer network does not exist. Wastewater management is the responsibility of the producer. As a result, sanitation is linked to housing, town planning, and access depends on the wealth of the resident. There's currently no integrated public service that makes it possible to monitor the entire sanitation chain, namely collection, evacuation, and treatment, except soil in the private sector. These services are scattered and not systematically monitored. Overall, in WASH, the quality of the services are neglected in favor of the establishment of infrastructure. The cost of providing services must be borne by household when infrastructure development is financed externally. The public treasury's contribution represents 0.05% of the national budget, which is equivalent to 1.2% of sector expenditure, and the rest is financed by development actors. The situation reflects the level of national interest. With so many competing government responsibilities, one thing which clearly will need to be addressed in the future is that the public sector does not yet recognize the transversal nature of sanitation and the link with health, education, and environment. We need political recognition that access to water and sanitation is the foundation of an emerging economy. We also need political recognition that the water and sanitation sector is critical for promoting human dignity and therefore human development and peace, as well as being essential for the prevention of public health epidemics. If we want to see increased political recognition to give WASH the visibility and recognition it deserves, we will need the following. We need to firmly establish the link between WASH and other key sectors such as health, education, environment, and economy, considering climate and gender. For this, we will need to research and document the cost of inaction to argue for financing of services. The public sector cannot do this alone, and we will require the contribution of the private business sector in provision of services. And to meet the needs of all, these services must be diversified. Even if provided by the private sector, service provision should be managed in a decentralized way by municipalities. We need to see actions currently provided by small actors scaled by municipality authorities. Without scale and municipal involvement, politicians will never give water and sanitation the attention it deserves. We must recognize the nexus between emergency and development and ensure that emergency interventions create resilient infrastructure and services for development. And finally, we need to monitor, evaluate, and document the sector's effort in collaboration with the public authorities to increase capacity and engagement. Without a continuous reading of the situation and an ability to evaluate progress, interest in the sector cannot be increased. So that's what I prepared. But if there are more questions, I can respond with.
Yeah, there'll be some more questions, I think. Thanks so much, Edwige. That's really great. I want to pick up on something you talked about there. I mean, you're talking about a situation where there needs to be a big scale up and formalization of commitment to the sector. And that's a common story that we hear. But I want to turn to Nana, because I think you probably have some interesting insights about the challenges of doing that. And this idea of trying to work across silos. I think in reality, we can say it, but I think you have some real experience of the challenges of making that happen in practice.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm going to do it in as short a time as possible. We all know, and I'm sure we agree, that globally we have missed, and as indicated by UN Water, over 2 billion people do not have access to safe water. And so we are off track generally. But at the centerpiece of implementation of water and sanitation are the country programs, our countries, our governments. Yeah. If we have to be successful, what goes on within the countries needs to be structured, functional, and be able to deliver. The mechanisms that we employ should be able to do that. In Ghana, Ghana was recently indicated as, selected as one of the case studies to demonstrate success in sub-Saharan Africa. They said 41% of Ghanaians have access to safe water and sanitation. Over 10 million Ghanaians within a period of from 2000 to 2020 now have access to safe water as well. Underlying all that is also the fact that sanitation rates are very poor in Ghana. Over 18% of people actually practice open defecation, which is terrible. So having said all this, why is this the situation? There have been some drivers, one major thing being the political agenda. It's finding its way on the political agenda. Politicians actually use water and sanitation to gain political capital. But when it gets to implementation, Water and Sanitation Ministry leads it. It becomes an issue more or less of the winner takes it all, with some attempts at working together with other ministries like health and education. But we need to be able to identify what health is best at doing in water and sanitation, and that one can be leveraged to deliver some efficient and effective strategies. One of them is that the communities are also the center point of implementation. So what can we do at the community? And the fact that we do not even involve our communities much in these things, communities should be able to lead, should be able to own the strategies and approaches that we employ in order to deliver good water and sanitation. And it requires a certain level of behavioral change as well. If I look at the Ministry of Health and the program that I led, the Neglected Tropical Diseases Program, at the time for a very long period, over 15 years, I led that program. Our strongest point was the fact that we worked with communities to deliver drug treatments. The communities actually prioritized these, they led it, and they were actually involved, engaged in the day-to-day treatment of people within the communities. So that was a point of success. Trachoma has been eliminated, Guinea worm, based on these same strategies, where they had village health committees to back that. Basically, we have neglected that, and the fact that we have various government sectors, ministries, departments, and agencies that are able to do that to ensure the success of these programs. So let me end by saying we need to look at the governance and coordination systems of water and sanitation in Ghana again, to involve the right sectors. Then also, we also, again, need to make sure that the communities are well represented at all levels. Finally, I was going to end with a story, but I think my time is passing.
You can make it a short story.
Right. So
I don't know if you can make it a short story, but let's see.
In terms of behavioral change, the importance of that, the fact that even our communities, our rural communities, have certain cultural practices that can inure to the benefit of water and sanitation. When trachoma was mapped in Ghana, the three northern regions, Upper East, Upper West, and then Northern region. Upper West was then found to be endemic. Northern region was also endemic. Between the two is Upper East, which was non-endemic, which was very interesting because it's almost the same kind of people that live there. So the academic institutions and yes, research people were tasked to find out what it was. The first thing they found out was that UNICEF had implemented a program in Upper East region, providing boreholes and wells that was very, very extensive, which was great, probably responsible, And then secondly, they found out that there was a cultural practice amongst the people in the Upper East region where it was a taboo for anybody to cite or see the fecal matter of another person. So people went, if they had to go outside to do their own thing, they always went with a hoe or a cutlass. They would dig the hole, finish, and then cover it with soil. That was a widespread practice. And they noticed that that could also probably. So these are things that we can also learn from the communities by involving them in the design of these health programs. And water and sanitation, amongst others, is one thing that we need to really consider in order to be successful with our programs and our drive towards as a 2050.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, what's really interesting here is I think I'm hearing this very important and challenging story about structuring the institutional frame well with the finance, with the sort of heavy duty institutional work we have to do, with a responsiveness to local conditions. And I think that's also a little bit one of the challenges we have here, is that often we're in one side of that equation or the other, and stitching those two things together is clearly one of the big challenges that we face. I'm going to ask Joanna Laurie here because I don't know if you can tell this, but basically she brings down the average age of this panel by a factor of 10. So I just wanted to ask you, representing all the people that can't say, well, in my 40 years, it's only got worse. Like from your perspective, as a young professional, young researcher entering the sector, what questions do you have for the sector? Or perhaps more useful, what do you see as the most pressing changes that need to happen in the WASH sector to address this existential challenge?
So I'll be answering this on behalf of me and not the entire young person population. But I want to ground my answer in this quote by Olufemi Tawo, who begins his book Reconsidering Reparations with, "Injustice and oppression are global in scale. Why? Because transatlantic slavery and colonialism built the world we live in, and slavery and colonialism were unjust and oppressive."
Mm-hmm.
Tawo uses he describes the world, not the planet, but the social ordering of the world as a system of aqueducts, that there are flows of capital, resources, power, and injustice in usually one direction, and then, capital, resources, and power in one direction, and then injustice in another. And I want us to consider how we consider those flows in our water work, and then to also think about how we could build a world that SDG 6 or clean water and sanitation, at least at a basic level, can be achieved for all, because I think it's not a goal that we can put off every few decades, but something that we need to believe that can be achieved. And so what would that world look like? And I want to ask also the WASH sector, is there room for repair in this work? Going further than acknowledging harm and trying to be humanitarian, but can we actually do work that is reparative and consider what is extractive and what is productive or constructive? I think that's all I have.
That's great. No, thank you so much. Thank you. I think you asked people to be provocative, and I think you can feel the tension here because, on the one hand, we can be optimistic about the things we can do with the current tools and current structures, but we can also ask a question whether the current tools and current structures are ever going to get us to the place we want to go. And I think that's a really interesting discussion to have. I'm just going to ask Sasha. Sasha volunteered to be the last panelist, and my instructions to Sasha are anything else that I can think of to ask that hasn't been talked about. So bad luck, Sasha. But I kind of want I just want to ask you a little bit, like, this is a new challenge. I mean, it's partially an old challenge. Some of the work is what we've always had to do, but some of it is really new. So how do you feel, like, do you think we have the skills we need to work in these new ways? I mean, if you reflect on working in Haiti, the enormous challenges, and then you're kind of running to a target which is running away from you because climate pressures are getting worse, you know, how do you see the kind of skills manifest in the sector these days to address this challenge?
Whew. When she told me the topic of this panel, I was terrified. But I have to say that listening to Jana right now, I do feel like we have come so far as a sector. Can you imagine 5 years ago at this conference, having heard the words that we've heard today on this panel? Racism, slavery, reparations, justice. I mean, we would not have heard this 5 years ago. And I think that looking at sanitation through this lens is what is going to bring more professionals to the sector, which is absolutely what we need. So my friend and colleague, Edwige, I just want to say, because she would not say it, she is my hero, because for the entire country of Haiti, she is the only person in the Haitian government who is focused on sanitation right now. This is shocking, and her courage inspires me every day. And it reminds me that we do not have enough professionals in this sector. And I think that I've just come back from South Africa from the first non-sword sanitation conference. A conference, the first time I've been to, I mean, there's a lot of firsts these 2 weeks. It's wonderful. This was the first time I've gone to a conference that focused exclusively on sanitation and that talked about non-networked, non-sword sanitation. I think we need to recognize that, as we saw with that donut, we have already gone beyond the boundaries of what ecosystems can support. And so the future that we're looking at is not a future where everyone has access to sword sanitation. However, if we do not bring more professionalism to the non-sword sanitation sector, we will continue to see the very inequalities that have created all of the unrest that we're seeing around the world today. So what I am asking of all of you young professionals out there is to know that sanitation is serious. Water is serious. Water is life. Sanitation is dignity. And I want you to be inspired by the fact that if you work in the wash sector, you are a human rights advocate. You are working for a different world. And I think that if we as a sector can remind people of that, then we're going to draw a lot more professionals into it. And they're going to be more inspired knowing that they're fighting for more than just a tap or a toilet. We are fighting for change in this world, for justice, equality, and ultimately reparations and a flow of financing back to the places where it was taken from. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We're going to be able to take a couple of comments from the floor. We are a little bit tight for time, I'm sorry, but if anybody would like to make a short intervention from the floor, if you could make your way to the microphone, I'm probably only going to have time for a couple. While you think about that, I just wanted to go back to Joel because I started with you and just, I mean, my sense of where we started was that there is a real interest in the finance sector, in the public finance sector, to step up to the challenge financially. Do you see signs that that is also responsive to some of the challenges that we've heard from the field in a place like, I think Haiti is a great example because it sort of encapsulates all the real on the ground challenges.
So I seem to be saying this a lot lately, especially here, but the answer depends. And it depends on the local context. I think on this issue of money in particular, there's no question we need more grants and we need to use those grants more strategically and effectively. There's a lot of talk and throw around the term blended finance, and that's an important one, and we need to do more. But it's not going to work if we don't deal with the foundational issues where people can use that money effectively. So grants are one aspect of it, more efficiency in the providers. And then I think something that we are spending more time and effort on is local currency. There's no reason, given the inputs that we need in the water sector, that those have to be generated in foreign exchange. And therefore, where we see currencies depreciating at 3 or 4% per annum, when we talk about tapping into private finance, we can, in fact, do it with domestic credit. And we see this happening in Indonesia, in Kenya, in Uganda, Bangladesh, where they use microfinance as a tool, which is an underutilized tool in many fragile states that we need to be looking at. So are we there? No, we're certainly not there. But do we know the way forward? I think we have a lot of the knowledge. We need to definitely tailor it to the local environment. We work in over 80 countries around the world. So in every instance where we have to customize what we're doing to make sure it fits the local environment. And water is a subnational. So it's not like there's one provider. What you do in one part of the country can be different in another part of the country, and we have to tailor it. So it's a complex answer, but I think we are making the steps to get there.
No, I think that's really helpful. I think just also one thing I wanted to sort of pull out from this conversation. One is that I think historically there's been a big break, a big sort of divide almost between a group of people having a finance conversation, we could say, and a group of people thinking about intergenerational justice, intercommunity justice, racial justice, all of those things. And what I find personally really encouraging is I see all of those conversations beginning to converge, which is really important. I think they always were linked, but I'm not sure that it was always seen that they were linked. The other thing I just wanted to pick up on is I think something I also hear is about the inside of that donut is increasingly going to have to be about the provision of high quality services. We might use different mechanisms, we might use different technologies, but I think we're all moving to a place where we understand that to address particularly the health challenges brought on by climate change and resilience, people need high quality services at home as much as possible to enable them to live in this new world. And I think, again, moving towards that can come from all of these strands. It can come from the financial discussion and it can come from the kind of community level discussion. I'd like to take a couple of interventions from the floor. I can see people over here. I'm sorry to say, can I ask you to be brief because we're going to run out of time as always.
I'll try to be brief, Barbara. Harold Lockwood from AgriConsult. I just wanted to respond to, I was very stimulated by Dr. Nana's excellent observations around politics and culture, which I think is extremely important, both present day, but also historically, maybe picking up on some of the comments from a colleague about past injustices. And this is a topic which we've picked up on. We've been doing work on political economy analysis actually in Ghana. And the conclusion we're coming to or seeing is that, yes, we can do all this stuff at the technical level and we know it's important, but actually what really matters is the politics. And that politicians are both sort of generally the problem, but also potentially the solution. So in 20, 30 years time, 2050, how are we going to see these kind of conversations in a different light and really harnessing politicians in countries where it really matters? Because that's really, at the end of the day, sovereign solutions to problems at the national level.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take a couple of comments and then I'm going to go to the group. I will have to ask you to be brief, sorry.
Mark Sapsa, University of North Carolina, and scientific officer for Aquagenics, a company that makes low-cost water tests for E. coli and other bacteria. So I was struck by one of the panelists mentioning the ISO, the ISO meeting that was held in South Africa very recently about non-sewered on-site sanitation systems. I was part of the group that created the protocol for that, focusing on the microbiological aspects. This is an effort to create on-site sanitation systems that would have high levels of performance, and it's been left to the commercial world and other stakeholders to come up with the solutions. There's been a lot of pushback against this program in some sectors, saying that the requirements are too stringent. But as a infectious disease specialist and microbiologist, I say that we have to stick with the high levels of performance that are articulated in the the ISO protocol. It's ISO protocol 30500. You can look it up.
Yeah.
And I would say that the challenge to the young people in the room and all of you is to find the technologies that will meet those requirements.
Yeah.
We are far from that. We can barely get, a few logs, order of magnitude reduction of most pathogens with the systems we have now. But I think the future means that in 2050, we will have achieved, the hope is that we will have achieved the targets that are established in the document.
Great, thanks, Mark. I can take one more if you can intervene in 1 minute. I'm sorry.
I'll take 45 seconds. Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm really impressed by Nana's story of Northeastern region where one person is not supposed to see the feces of another person. But here I'm talking about sanitation workers who are helping us maintain and operate and run the entire sanitation system where billions of dollars have gone in.
Yeah.
And I see that as an area of real injustice. We've spoken about race, color, ethnicity, language, but we've not spoken of something called caste, which is very prominent in South Asia. And there are certain castes which are entrusted with sanitation work, and many of them handle human fecal matter manually. And it's as simple as scooping it up from a pit and putting it somewhere. And that's also common in sub-Saharan Africa. So after listening to Sasha, Edwige, and Nana, I'm moving right to left and I stop at Joel. As World Bank, I'd really urge you to look at possibilities of how something can be done, which does not possibly have a return on investment in financial terms, but with a very high social and environmental and health cost to the sanitation workers.
Yeah.
So that's my appeal to Joel to please look into this, something that can be done. More than happy to talk to this on offline.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we have a short period. So I just want to kind of pull all of that together. And I hear kind of like three really important threads. I mean, one, a really important point about politics, and both of you had already touched on politics. And clearly, we've always said this, we need this to be a political story, but it's a slightly different political story when we're trying to bring very disadvantaged people up to a level without facilitating other people to go to such a level that takes us beyond the planetary, it's kind of like it's about the political challenge of targeting our investments to the people who need it most. And just picking up on Mark's point, to do that with services which are not substandard or specialized for disadvantaged groups, but are actually professional, standard, good quality services. So given that that challenge, that's kind of what I feel, and not to also ignore the question of workers and the whole ecosystem of how we do service delivery. So I'd like to give you all like a 1 minute final plea, and I want you to think about one thing that you think needs to be done differently, ideally by you or people like you, in the face of these challenges. I'm going to give you just a few seconds to think about that question. I'm actually going to go this way down the line only because I don't think I should give Joel the last word again, because that would look bad. The optics would be terrible. I've known him the longest, right? It would be very bad. Joel.
I'm rarely unprepared, but I am unprepared for this one. Look, it's very hard to take all of this, but I go back to the root of it, and that is the service and how we implement the service, whether it's sanitation workers, whether it's the financing, whether it's sanitation or water and rural or urban. We have to do it within the framework of institutions, how they deliver those services, the governance around them, the leadership. And that's foundational. And if we don't have that base, everything else tends to fall apart. And we see how that falls apart in conflict areas, in particularly rural areas or low-income areas. It's not working as effectively because we don't have that institutional architecture to build on. So I would put it
so we need a framework. We need robust institutions, and we can't walk away from that. Nana.
Right. So I'm just going to.
No other stories, by the way. Sorry.
No,
you don't have
not other stories. No, I'm just going to re-emphasize the fact that we need to take a second look at the institutions and the structures. I mean, we need to actually probably reorganize coordination of how we implement these programs in country, and at the end of it all, also ensure that the community voice is made stronger than it currently is. So, thank you.
Yeah. I just want to intervene because you said a super interesting thing earlier when we were talking about this. So Nana said the other thing, we were talking about coordination between sectors. And you said another thing that we perhaps need to lose is the idea that in a kind of political development discussion, it's not a winner takes all business.
Yeah.
And that's maybe one of the problems, that often it's seen as a competition, if you like, between the health sector and the infrastructure guys, but actually we need to work together rather than try and sort of win the fight for resources. I thought that was a great analogy.
All right. Thank you.
Edwige.
So it's not easy, but in 1 minute, public service supposed to be question of equality. So if political people, if the official really manage the service, we will attain the equality. The problem now is that everything is about program and international agenda.
Yeah.
We're supposed to change that and we're supposed to have our own agenda, public service agenda.
Yes.
That's the point.
That's a fabulous thing. Thank you. Yes. Sasha.
Okay, that's hard to follow. But
Yeah.
I think the one thing we keep hearing is about the transversal nature of WASH.
Yeah.
And I think that if we want to see change, we need to break down the silos. It doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in everything, but it means that you need to recognize the connections between WASH and many other sectors. And I think that as COVID did, climate change will remind us that WASH is a public issue, it is a global issue, and it is something that all of us need to engage in.
Thank you.
Pulling on that same thread, I did have another question, and it was, is there room for climate justice in WASH, and how can we better pull on that moment right now with climate change being a very pressing topic in general discourse, but also in our field? And I know it's not best practice to try to work yourself out of a job, but what are we all going to be doing in 2050 when WASH access is universal? And I'm thinking about, how are we going to work backwards in terms of like realizing that vision? What will you do in 2050 that you can't do in 2023? And how do we close that gap? I think thinking through that and what is possible and what is real and tangible to do now and what is possible in the future is dependent on how you think and view things. A lot of us are engineers, practitioners, and so our ideas become a material reality. And I think there's a lot of responsibility in that, in creating the future we want to see.
Thank you so much. And I think if I could summarize the sort of point of this panel, it's really to try and get you to take that idea into the rest of the week. We must always be questioning in a meeting like this, are we having a conversation about the paradigm of the last century, or are we having a conversation that's taking us to where we need to be in 2050 with all the complexity that this amazing panel has brought? I really want to thank my panelists. They were very brave. They didn't quite know what was going to happen. David would like to have a word.
Yes. I always try to learn in real time. And one of the things I learned was your wonderful short statement, sanitation is dignity.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought about it, but never in such a pithy and powerful way. I totally agree with the sentiments here that to attract more people to this sector, playing up the importance of justice, dignity, race, reparations from the past, those issues are, I speak as a professor. I already mentioned my course. 17 of my 20 students are first years. They are hungry for information about public health. What motivates them? Climate change and social justice. Those are the things that, and if we can tap into that energy, I think you will have more professionals willing to take these very difficult tasks and move them forward.
Great. So I'd like to ask everybody to thank my very brave panel, our very, very brave panel here. Thank you. You know who they are now. They're here all week. So they're the first people that get buttonholed in the corridor. So if I could ask you all to proceed off the stage, and I will pass the floor back to Kaida. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can keep talking if you like.
Please thank the panel again for starting us off really well this week. Okay, I realize that I am standing between you and lunch, so I am going to make this quite quick, but there are a couple of things that I want to remind you of. There are two eating areas. One is obviously the Trillium Dining Room, and then we also have a second floor, which serves approximately 100 people. So if that lineup is really long and you're really aching for lunch, then you can head upstairs to the second floor. There's another lounge there for you to eat. Please join us again for the workshops, the continuation of the workshops that started this morning. They start at 1:30 along with our side events, so come back for those. We have verbal presentations that begin at 3:30, so check your programs to see all the different verbal presentations that will be going on. We had a record number of abstracts submitted this year to the conference, over 500 academic abstracts, so please be sure to meet and listen to our presenters. And we have a poster reception, also a booze and schmooze, as we call it, that starts at 4:45 p.m. And so please join us for posters and some drinks this afternoon. And again, we had the first plenary today, and please join us again on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for other exciting and a really great lineup of speakers. And again, on Friday, we will have an interview with Sarosh Jha, the Global Director for Water Global Practice from the World Bank. He will be here on Friday, and in interview with Aaron Salzberg. And then, of course, we want to thank all of our sponsors. And I'm not going to read them all off here, but please be sure to thank them for their contribution to the conference this year. And we also have our event sponsors to thank. So thank you to everybody who's made this conference possible. And without further ado, I will send you off to lunch. And join us tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, we will have 3 special lunch events. But today you're free to just network and get to know new people and have yourself a really great day.